Future Now Show. Brought to you by the Club of Amsterdam.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Future Now Show. Joining us today, we have Dr. Frank-Jürgen Richter, founder and chairman of Horasis, the Global Visions Community. And we're going to be discussing innovation, sustainability, and reconstruction. Hi, Frank. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Katie. How are you doing? Very good speaking with you.
Great having you. So let's kick off by talking about some of the greatest geopolitical stressors in the world today. What are your thoughts? What's going on?
Well, Katie, the current state of the world is quite gloomy. If you look into, the news section every morning, you will learn about the war in Ukraine. Of course, wildfires, inundations all around the world. So climate change is really happening. Just yesterday, there was a major natural catastrophe in Slovenia with a lot of people losing their homes. And, it's really all over. And I'm not sure if everything is kind of connected. I guess it is. Or is it just happening randomly? But yeah, there's geopolitical stress, definitely. We don't really know how the whole war scenario is playing out at the end. And also, if at one point there will be a ceasefire, what is happening afterwards? What's happening in Moscow, and who is going to come after Putin, if at all? And then we have elections in the US, where you're based. We don't really know next year, who's coming to the White House, if eventually Trump is coming back. We see a lot of nationalism all around the world, and especially in Europe, right-wing parties are taking over in Germany, even in Switzerland, where I'm based, in France, the Nordic countries. It's a trend we are observing, and maybe globalization is moving into deglobalization. The world as we knew it is defunct. Supply chains are disrupted. We see that China is kind of decoupling from the rest of the world for political reasons, but also for economic reasons. The world is trying to be get more independent of China in terms of supply chains and importing goods. But, nothing is as it used to be. And we need still the magic formula to solve all of this.
Right. So what are some ways that we could potentially tap innovation to solve some of these issues going on right now?
I think what we really need, Katie, is something like what I call joint innovation, not just all sitting in our silos and trying to find solutions, but we need new models of collaboration in the global public interest. In a way, public institutions speaking to the private sector from country A speaking to country B, and finding a new formula for trust. Because, trust is really the new currency, and trust is on a very low level right now. So we need joint innovation. We need an open innovation system. We need to share knowledge and not just hide knowledge. In a way, we should avoid to create and build new Chinese walls around us. And I think we should also try to spur trade again. Trade, as we knew it, the WTO, the World Trade Organization, is also defunct. We are moving into bilateral partnerships. And at the end, we should also look into the United Nations and their role in all this, right? And to see that we need to come up with a model where countries, again, speak with each other, and the private sector playing an important role.
Now, is there a future for globalization?
I think, Katie, globalization is here to stay. It will stay, but it has to be redesigned, a new form of globalization, which is also looking into the global south and countries which are not, which have not been at the center of globalization so far, small countries in Africa, for example. And the question is, what shall we do? Should we just send over money to support them, subsidies, or should we invest? And I strongly believe that continents like Africa, but also Latin America, parts of Asia, they are the new drivers, the new centers of globalization. And here, multinationals from Europe and America should go. Those are the new opportunities. Think about India. India, I'm very bullish on India, I have to say. I think India will reach 10% growth rates very soon. It's just a question of time. They got a very business-oriented government. And it's a new El Dorado, so to say, and everybody is trying to find, ways to invest, replacing China. China has been the engine of globalization for many years, and India is going to come. But yeah, I think we have to learn about those countries. We all still believe that, it's the India of the old days. Where people just live in poverty, but it's the contrary. I've just been to Mumbai a few weeks ago, and I've seen all the bus in the city, a lot of infrastructure being built, a lot of entrepreneurship. In India, young people want to create companies. They don't want to work for large companies. They want to be entrepreneurs. And I believe the world should really take advantage of this new flavor of entrepreneurship coming from India and other countries as well.
Now, who are going to be these major key players? You mentioned BRICS nations like India. Is this are we moving away from, obviously the unipolar world of America kind of leading the charge? Who are going to be these major front runners besides potentially India?
I wouldn't write off America. America is still doing very well. And maybe one reason is migration, because usually, migrants come to America. They are behind Silicon Valley, for example. Most of the large tech companies are actually run by Indian nationals. If you think about Google, Microsoft, and other companies, Tesla is run by a South African. So we see that migration is actually very important, and America is taking advantage of that. We should have more migration in Europe. Europe is still very closed. The concept of the nation state is still there. But migration, if it's controlled, like a bit even Canada is doing, is very beneficial for the economy. So yeah, the new players, I would say, innovation is going to come from places like India, Southeast Asia, more and more Africa. It's like, a major jump forwards. They don't have the kind of legacy system we have in the West. So they can have a fresh start, and innovation is going to happen there. The question is, how can we revitalize the Western economies? How can we revitalize Europe and partly also America? Because, growth is never forever. If you think about the old empires, let's say the British Empire before, in the Middle Age, we got the European Middle Age, and until Renaissance happened, the Roman Empire, there's always a peak, and then they're falling, and the next empire is coming. So nothing is forever, and I think America should think about how to maintain its competitiveness, and potentially joining hands with India and also China. China, of course, is a different country to think about, because there's some competition between China and America. It's even a very systemic competition when it comes to technology, even governance, and people say human rights. But at the end of the day, right, we have to collaborate. We need dialogue, and we have to join hands to improve the state of the world.
Now, there's so much fear and uncertainty among people, I would say particularly in America, for sure, when it comes to the future and where things are heading. And, we have the FedNow coin that's coming out, and a lot of people are freaking out over that and saying that this is the beginning of, centralized currencies and all that. Now, do you think that this fear is impeding innovation? Is it holding us back in some ways? And what can we do to better show people the vision for the future we're heading to?
Yeah, very good question. I like that. I think fear is, in a way, part of the human condition. And there's always fear, right? How is tomorrow going to look like? Can we adjust? Can we adopt? And innovation is always linked to the idea of how to overcome this fear and to create something better. I think we have to work with the young people and tell them that the world is open, that the future can be bright, and have the right mindset to do so. Unfortunately, it's just the opposite happening. There's so much of pessimism, and especially young people easily give up, right? They don't go until, you know, the last mile, going to university, they have maybe a cozy life, and suddenly they say, oh, you know, it's all boring, and they blame the government, right? But we still need, again, the initiative, the self-initiative of young people. I think the younger the better, because innovation has always been linked to this breakthrough of the young generation coming up with new ideas.
Yeah. What about stakeholder capitalism? Is that a way forward? You know, bringing the people into these discussions more so?
Right. Yeah, you know, we are moving from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism, definitely. But of course, both are in a way a buzzword. Shareholder capitalism, starting with the Chicago School of economic thought some 40, 50 years ago, and saying that only shareholders, right, are behind economic growth, and that should be gratified. Now we've seen that this kind of capitalism is no longer valid, because not everybody can benefit from shareholder capitalism, just maybe the hedge funds, the investors, the large companies. But capitalism needs to be inclusive, and we have to give back to society. We have to help people to get the right education, even, you know, helping the underprivileged to get enough food to eat and to have a decent life. And I'm not a communist in a way. I'm not a socialist. I'm just saying that you know, capitalism needs to be linked with, you know, the social good or the public good, and that's, you know, what you call stakeholder capitalism, even including the unions. In some countries, for example, in Germany, but also the Nordic countries, the unions have a very important role, and it's not kind of destroying capitalism, but they sit on one table with the CEOs and think about, you know, how they can jointly shape a better future where everybody, you know, can thrive and realize their future. And the Nordic countries in particular actually are extremely competitive. Think about Sweden, Denmark. They have very important and large companies, and despite having high taxes to finance stakeholder capitalism, they're doing very well. Denmark actually is the number 2, I think, and Finland number 1 on the list of the happiest countries on earth. Maybe heard about the gross happiness index. And yeah, Denmark, Finland number 1, Denmark 3, Sweden numbers 3 or 4. So yeah, you know, I think the Nordic countries are a very good example how to combine economic interest and social interest.
Now, there's this whole other element that we're talking about, which is climate change and the UN sustainability goals. How are these going to affect the direction we're moving towards in the future?
You know, when the SDGs came up and the UN talked about the Sustainable Development Goals, everybody said, oh, again, that's all about UN talk, right? Somebody saying, you know, how it should be, a lot of, you know, idealistic thinking. But by the meanwhile, I think most companies and citizens understood that the SDGs are extremely important. And companies actually which are not aligned to the SDGs might lose on the long term, because the investors might not look after them anymore. Investors now are carefully looking into how much companies are aligned, you know, when it comes to the social goals. And so the SDGs, you can basically you know, put them in numbers right now. You can measure them, and that's the right way to go. Personally, I very much believe in climate tech. Technology can solve a lot of issues, and it's not just, you know, giving a goal, the UN or the governments, but companies themselves, right, can find solutions and how to curb climate change using technology. And I think technology has always been a source of human progress in the past, you know, starting with the steam engine 150 years ago, and so on and so on. And innovation has always been linked to some pressure from the outside. in this case, climate change. And this is really, directing us into the right, into the future, which is beneficial to all of us.
Absolutely. Now, in brief, what is the philosophy of your organization, Horasis?
Well, we are organizing every year large-scale summits for entrepreneurs and governments. And the idea is to shape a better future and to inspire the future. Everything we do is future-oriented. So when participants meet at our meetings, at our events, at our summits, they talk about the future in very particular fields. It could be geopolitics, it could be technology, it could be the social structure, the social backbone of countries, and coming up with solutions. And it's a peer-to-peer approach. People go there for 2 days, and it's like in a deep dive into what's happening now in the world and how we can find solutions. Our next meeting, our Horasis global meeting, our flagship event, will be held in Turkey, in Gaziantep, which is in the southern part of Turkey, the area which was hit by the earthquake in February. And it's all about reconstruction. So people go there with ideas and how to help the city, how to fund reconstruction. And it's not just kind of reconstructing in a way as things look like before the earthquake, but now it's in a way a chance to build it even better, to find solutions which are sustainable for the long term. And that's the idea. And most people really come with the interest to help and to find solutions.
Correct. Now, that actually reminds me of during the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns and everything that happened, there was the Build Back Better, phrase that was going around. Now, what are your thoughts about building back better? Is this something we could really achieve?
To be frank with you, Katie, it's of course great. We should do it, but it didn't really happen so far.
Right.
When COVID in a way stopped, and it's not over, right? But we're just not talking about it anymore. But when this whole kind of COVID frenzy was over, then most people just went back to normal, right? And not a new normal, as we said, but just back to the normal. Think about flying and traveling. The airlines make a lot of profit this year because everybody is flying. The airports are full with passengers, and there's no kind of environmental consciousness. No, everybody wants to travel. It's difficult to get a seat on a plane, and not much changed, unfortunately. I think what we really need are people with vision, people at the top, and we need a top-down approach on that, right? We need people at the very top who give the direction on how to build better, how to really put emphasis on the environment, how to find solutions, and not just kind of continuing as we did before. Unfortunately, we don't really see so many leaders having these capabilities. I don't really see the visionaries at the top. Maybe because, our system, democracy, is not made for that. Usually, we get people there, there are coalitions, maybe some compromises, who's rising, but we don't really get the best people at the top. And I'm not sure how to solve it, but I just wish, right, that we get better leaders at the top running our economies and the world.
Indeed. So what can we expect at your upcoming event? And what are the dates? You mentioned it was in October?
Yeah, the dates are 22nd, 23rd of October in Gaziantep. You're very welcome to join, maybe moderating a panel. You're very welcome. We will have around 500 participants, mostly speaking on panels, several head of states, around 10 ministers from various countries, and CEOs, from Turkey, of course, the host country, from Europe, Africa, Middle East, Central Asia, so the countries all around Turkey, but also America. Will be a huge American delegation. The Turkish US Business Council is going to join with a delegation, but also Asian participants, Thailand, where you're based partly, I learned, but also China, Japan. So it's really a global meeting with around 75 countries being represented. Yeah, the global meeting is our flagship, but we are also hosting regional summits. We host meetings on Southeast Asia. This meeting will be held in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam in early December. We do a meeting on India. And next year, by the way, we are going to host our first US meeting in Florida. So yeah, a lot of things on the plate, and we would like to cover the whole world, but putting a special emphasis on high growth countries, countries with prospects, but also countries which still need help, investment, and trying to join hands. And I mentioned before, dialogue is really what we are into. We would like to spur the dialogue and having as many as people from different walks of life joining us, not only from business. We are also inviting cultural leaders, we're inviting academic world, and also the media. So yeah, it's really the meeting spot this October in Gaziantep in Turkey.
I'll have to check that out. That sounds very exciting, especially the one in Florida next year as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
Exactly.
so what is your website? Where can we learn more info about your upcoming events?
So go on horasis.org, our website. By the way, Horasis means visions in ancient Greek. So, you know, we talked about long-term visions before. You can also go on social media, go on LinkedIn. There are posts every day about, you know, the upcoming summits and confirmation of speakers. And yeah, please join us on the spot at our meetings, but in between, please join the dialogue.
Excellent. All right, Frank, thank you so much for joining us today on the Future Now show.
Thanks so much, Katie. Pleasure speaking with you. Thank you.
And to our audience out there, thank you for joining us again. We hope to see you again on our next show. And until then, we will see you in the future.